Julianne Ginter.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, tēnā koutou e te whare. Thank you. I rise to speak about the government's financial statements for the previous year. Budgets are all about priorities. We have a choice about what we spend our money on, and where we spend our money speaks volumes about what is really important to us. And this national government, I think, is clear, is quite out of touch with what's really important to New Zealanders. The government ministers and members have been speaking about the growth rate, economic growth rate being slightly over 3%. But economic growth is not an end in and of itself. And the economy is there to serve us. It's there to ensure that people are able to live better lives. And the entire economy, of course, takes place within the confines of the natural environment. So National's economic growth, unfortunately, isn't all based on us being better off. A significant portion of the economic growth we're seeing this year, and that's forecast for the next few years, is entirely related to the Christchurch rebuild. And we're not better off because we had an earthquake and a lot of buildings had to be rebuilt, but that's what it looks like for the next few years. It looks like there's high economic growth. We're not better off because there's an out-of-control situation in Auckland with house prices, yet it does look that way on the surface. And I think many New Zealanders will realize that we're not better off in an economy that's becoming more and more divided between those who have and those who have not. So National's economic strategy is based on increasing pollution and increasing inequality. It's a woefully 20th century approach. And we know more and more from the research that's coming out around the world that there are opportunities to have a far more sustainable economy. The great economic opportunity of the 21st century is responding to climate change and to global inequality. And if by responding to those, we could have a sustainable economy that actually left New Zealanders better off, because New Zealanders love their natural environment and they want to live in a country where we all have a fair go, and not just some people, a smaller and smaller portion of people increasingly holding the majority of the wealth. Of course, National started with tax cuts for the wealthy. That continues to cost us about $1 billion a year, and that was a choice that this national government made to prioritize tax cuts for those who already had a lot of money, rather than using that money on programs that would actually address the problem of growing poverty amongst children in this country. So rather than spending the money on the 250,000 children in New Zealand that don't have enough to eat, that don't go to school hungry and aren't able to learn, they chose to prioritize tax cuts for the wealthy. Then they claimed that despite having $1 billion a year to spend on tax cuts for the wealthy, we didn't have enough money, so we had to sell our state-owned energy companies, which were turning a nice profit for the taxpayer. So in order to raise about the same amount of money that we lost through tax cuts for the wealthy in the first 4 to 5 years of this national government, we sold our profitable state-owned energy companies. And of course, the privatization of those shares just went to a small portion of New Zealanders, just several thousand New Zealanders. Those who had enough money in their pockets, a few thousand spare in cash to pick up those shares, and now are benefiting from that investment. And National said it would spend the proceeds of these asset sales wisely on productive infrastructure. That was the term used by the finance minister, who's also the Minister for Infrastructure. But in fact, what we've seen the money spent on are a bunch of election bribes. So rather than prioritizing infrastructure projects on the basis of a rational assessment of what is going to be best for the New Zealand economy, we've seen bridges and roads randomly chosen from around the country where Stephen Joyce, the campaign manager for the National Party, thinks they're going to yield the most votes for the National Party and the best way to win electorate seats. There are also poor investments, not just because they've been cherry-picked from where National thinks they can get the greatest priority, but because they do nothing to reduce our reliance on carbon pollution and imported oil. One would think, given it's 2015, it's the 21st century, that we would be investing in infrastructure that actually reduces pollution and responds to climate change. This national government is so arrogant They refuse to take the advice of the OECD, the IMF, the UN, the thousands of scientists working for the UN who have told us that we need to take urgent action to respond to climate change. We need to reduce climate pollution. And all new investments in infrastructure should take us in that direction of reducing rather than increasing pollution.
Mr. Chair,